Hello, Grüße to everyone. Now we are set up for doing our little recording and having a conversation of what happened so far. It's a podcasty, meeting-ish, live style thing we do now together. I'm looking forward to that. Before we dive into some questions and have a discussion, have a chat about that, maybe let's just shortly introduce ourselves so everyone knows who we are, why we are here, why we are talking together. Would you like to give it a start as the hosts kind of this week's gathering?
Yeah, sure. So we're at the end of our exchange trips, aren't we? So we're in Dalgylch, North Wales, in the Dyffryn Conwy area. My name's Katie, and I am part of the group Dyffrin Dyfodol, CIC, a community interest company. And we're quite newly set up, actually. We've only been set up a year.
Yeah.
Is it a full year now or more than a year?
I think it's a bit over a year now, isn't it? I think so. And Dyffryn Dyfodol means future valley, but it's not specific about which future, which valley. Although we have been working primarily in the Conwy Valley so far. We're open to other valleys as well, aren't we? And other futures to explore as well. I'm yw'r.
Would you guys like to tell us who you are?
Yeah, my name is Marleen. I'm part of Syndikat Gefährliche Liebschaften, or the Syndikat. That's how we are called in Wales. I really like this shortage of our name.
And what does the name of the organisation mean?
It means Syndikat Dangerous Liaisons, let's say, or Dangerous Affairs.
Syndikat for Dangerous Affairs.
Syndikat means that it's, kind of a loose but still very, responsible gathering of individuals that have a common cause that they work on together. Dangerous means that we like to take risks, and affairs means that we like to, connect with people that we get to know in the locations that we work on, and we try to find, can you say complicit, or like develop a common cause together with them, or go on a mission, engage into a mission together with them. That's the long but still very truthful meaning of our name. Yeah, and I'm a performer, cultural scientist, and I do several things. Luckily, together with you guys.
We're so glad to do.
And you?
Yeah, so my name is Micha. I'm also part of this collective.
My name is Felix. I'm also part of the group. As a group, we are a bigger constellation with 3 more people that are not with us here in Wales now on this exchange. And I also sometimes as a creative producer, or as a part job, I work as a creative producer also in other cultural fields.
Great. And I suppose we didn't say what we do very much either.
No.
So we're really interested in emergent practice, so collaborating with creatives or communities where we might not know exactly what we're doing. We might have an overall intention, as in exploring the future, but what we do and how we do it is really open to things that emerge from conversations with people and meeting people. We put relationships with people at the heart of everything that we do. So
it's not about having like an endpoint, a fixed endpoint, a defined outcome. We know that we will arrive at all sorts of outcomes at the end, but we don't want to specify that at the beginning of a project or a relationship. So that's why it's very much a kind of an emergent process. And we both have different hats for different things with different organisations, working as a freelancer in the cultural sector, and then also I work with communities and growing spaces, so helping communities come together to grow things, community gardens and such like.
There's a whole other conversation, I think, about the precarity of freelance work, but we won't go there today.
Right.
I think we haven't got time.
Yeah. So I think one thing that we share is also in the title of our exchange, we already put it as bridging rural communities, and with a focus on processes, places and people. That's something I think we have in common, even though our practices are very different, or we can learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm still learning. Like the more time we spend together, the more we learn, and more we find out about beyond the title of a piece of work or the headlines of a piece of work. It's actually getting down to the detail, which is where, there's lots of interesting differences and similarities between how we work and our approaches to our projects.
Great, thanks. Maybe we dive into it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it would be nice to just chat about how we initially came together and how we decided on our kind of process of exchange and slow travel. Who remembers how that all started?
Well, I think it started kind of quite naturally, talking about how we would potentially collaborate. I don't know if we want to talk about how we first met briefly. Cultural Bridge organised an online network session. Misha and myself were in the same breakout group, and I know my first feeling was, who is this person? I need to talk more to this person. Really.
Yeah, I had the same feeling. So yeah, actually quite fun because, from our perspective, there was this opportunity of making this exchange, but we were like, how do we don't know anyone, how do we approach it? And then to be set up in this kind of like blind dating experience worked out pretty well, actually.
Yeah, I think it's turned out okay so far.
Yeah, thank you.
Early in the relationship.
Yeah, so that was the initial spark. And then obviously collectively applied for the Cultural Bridge funding tier 1. And then we were successful, obviously, and here we are. Here we are all together,
Yes.
seeing you guys for real. So this is the second part of the exchange. So, does anyone want to talk about the decision about the journey, how we sort of travelled? And
I remember it in a way that we had like two directions coming together. On the one hand, when we were starting to talk and think about how we set up our process together. When we applied, we kind of decided that we will take it slow in terms of being creatives that already like, okay, let's get together, let's do something. That could be also like we could create something, whatever it could be, a result, an outcome. But then we decided, well, it's actually an invitation to get to know each other and to have like a process with each other that doesn't have to have a result. So that's why I kind of decided on slowly getting to know each other and taking slowness in observing, having talks with each other. I mean, where we are now here it's kind of the end of our tier 1 process, where we are meeting up in Wales. We had kind of for, I don't know, maybe 9 months over the year. We had online meetings, Zooms, once a month, getting to know each other online. And then we suddenly, we finally met each other. We slowly met each other, but then abruptly met each other live with you visiting us in Germany, in the town of Meppen, in the northwest of Germany, and now we are here with you in the Conwy Valley in Wales, in the northwest of Wales.
Yeah. I think the other thing that connected us was also interested in like ecosystems, landscapes, and what kind of impact do we make while traveling, like locally but also on the way. So it was like an easy decision to say, okay, let's take the train, and then to start from there. Like that's also complicated, that takes so much time. So how do we do that, and how do we use the time spent there? And to also think it's
part of the provocation, isn't it? So recognising that the train travel is a longer journey, and what can we do to explore connections with strangers ultimately on the train, and coming up with some ideas about having some props to spark the conversation, which was an interesting learning process in terms of the different train companies and spaces, and how you make that initial connection with someone who you've never met before, and try and explore. So we had the theme about water, didn't we? So to try and sort of explore people's relationships with water.
Because that's really interesting. We were saying, well, we're not actually going to do any activity, but actually we did do some kind of experimenting with some of our ways of working, actually, didn't we, as part of it? So there is the people that we've had conversations with along our journey to you and your journey to us, really. So even though that's not the end point, kind of as part of our exchange, it's been us actually doing some activity as well, which has been like a little extra special kind of bonus bit of activity that we've done, really, as part of the slow travel. And for me, that's when we talk about slow travel, for me it is about the Zoom meetings as well as the actual travel. It is about kind of again, the relationship being the most important thing, really. So by doing it slowly, we started discussing some kind of partnership collaboration together. We started exploring that. How do organisations come together and work in a way that is positive and kind and
equal.
And equal, yeah, and that frames it in a way there's a good foundation to then move on to do something together in the future.
I think it was also very telling that both of our groups had the experience that the situations in the regional trains were much, easier for connecting with people and daring to kind of disturb somebody from their, what they do. And I find that really nice because in our practice we, also have an interest in, certain regional topics, or, we work in certain regions, and we are, interested in, the regions that we actually came across in the train are, our areas of working, and so and also in the trains, it was kind of easy to get to know with the people. Right. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I felt the same way. And then when arriving, we kind of set out also, like, made an itinerary for each week. We, like, each of us would visit the other one a week in the region where they would be working, where there would already be established connections or projects to talk about, other creatives to meet that also are there somehow, that sometimes we didn't even know beforehand, but then together with you would get to know them. So we kind of set out the week, in my opinion, as like field trips, to go together, being in a car, going someplace, making a walk, like just exploring together, and to make these two landscapes, a shared landscapes in somehow.
Yeah.
So maybe you all can share a little bit about like moments that you remember from that time, like special encounters, connections, things that surprised you, and maybe also share like how they are connected to this idea of like bridging rural communities, or like in terms of similarities and differences.
Yeah,
I've got something that really is quite a powerful experience. When we came to Meppen, a number of experiences, but having made a connection with a lady who I went swimming with in 5-degree water. So that's a passion that I have, in my life here in Wales. And I didn't know if I would have the opportunity to do that in Meppen. And obviously our theme, as mentioned before, is about water. And for me, having to immerse myself in the water is physically, emotionally, sort of spiritually really powerful, to just be so present. And it was really amazing to meet a stranger through the introduction, and find an opportunity twice actually to go with her in a sort of special lake, and that connection, that commonality then enables more conversations to take place. So that was a moment that was particularly special for me.
Yeah, we also met someone unexpected close to a water here in Conwy, actually. That was the day before yesterday, I think, near the beach, where because you've been carrying around sound equipment, and this person that we didn't know approached you, I think, and asked you, what are you doing? That looks interesting. And so we engaged in a conversation with her, and I don't know, you exchanged contacts and so on. It was very, like a spark of interest from both sides suddenly, because this person just appeared out of nowhere. We actually just wanted to leave, and we ended up taking a group picture with them.
Yeah, and I think that kind of chance encounter is a lot to do with kind of both our organisations' work, really. Those chance encounters that might lead to something. And now for me, I've been looking at, she's a musician, she's a student who's just been travelling for 6 months and is back home living with her parent. So I think for us living in the area, I've spoken to lots of young people who come back from college and find it really difficult to find work or projects, or what the cultural landscape is like, really. So already I've been starting thinking about who I can put her in touch with in the area, so that she can actually maybe get some gigs to play her music or record some music or something. So just from that chance meeting, I'm already thinking, how can I kind of share some of the knowledge, information we've got with her to support her, actually. So I'm sure we'll see her again.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I like this moment of like sometimes when we are starting a project, we have like an agenda or a thing, a question that we follow, and then we start to meet the people who also have a similar question or who like want to use us, you know, because they have some agenda. So like with her, or when we were in Meppen with the family Fieler, who we visited on their farm, and as far as I know, they have not been to a holiday much in their lives, but they immediately said, "Oh, we would go to Wales, you know, do you organize it?" So suddenly there's this possibility of, you know, us, I don't know, chartering a bus and just coming, you know.
There were a lot of people that wanted to come to Wales, weren't there?
And it's interesting because it's like almost like it's a door of opportunity for people, isn't it? Because there's a contact to somewhere else, so there's a possibility then, and it makes it possible. I think just by us existing within communities, there's part of what we do is like opening doors to possibilities, really, and maybe futures that people hadn't considered. But through again, I keep talking about relationship, but it's about people coming together, and that's what opens possible futures. Actually, I think they'd be welcome here as well. I mean, it'd be quite interesting to bring the farming family here, to meet some farmers here, and just, you know, like we've done with exchanging our practices and meeting different people, for them to be able to do that in a agricultural setting would be super interesting.
What about you with your...
Yeah, I'm...
There's so many things, aren't there?
I was just thinking about Franwen, where we have been. So, or what's in my head is this thought that just, it's also maybe because I don't know Meppen that much, maybe more, you know it more, that I have the feeling here we, like, from the selection you had to make of meeting people, we met a lot of people that are really engaged with artistic and community practices in the landscape, or with communities and the surroundings and the landscape. We went to this place where people changed a church into a former church into like the architecture of it, now have it as a community arts culture space, and they were also like projecting a lot now into the future, what is the possibilities this space offers. And I was just thinking that is something I think I learned also a bit now being with you here, as an approach, or like to even more bring the landscape, or think about the landscape also in terms of in community engagement as a variety, or like a category in that.
Thinking of, or speaking of the landscape, it was very how do you say that, remarkable maybe, to be in the moorlands yesterday together with you, because it was, at least from my perspective, so there was just much more left, that it was just kind of a healthy whatever that means, but a landscape that has been
a proper moor.
That has been left on their own, and like left in peace. Maybe of course there were people working on it to the National Trust, I guess, to care for it and stuff, but coming from Meppen, where the moor is in a very different state, also with other agricultural history, and that was very, I don't know, very interesting to see this. This is what it could also look like, actually.
But to just meet also the same plant, like the sphagnum is just, like we kind of re-encountered the same plant again. Yeah. But what I also thought, like what I didn't expect before, was we were talking about the moors and the water and all of this country, but we never that much talked about the slate production, and that leaves is maybe like a similarity. I mean, the pitland in Meppen is like a highly industrialized area there, and that leaves it will never be returned to how it was before in any way, and the mountain here with the slate production will also just stay that way. Maybe after some time you will see it less, but the landscape kind of is changed forever now. So that's something that was unexpected for me to find in just a different way of production, but just also that impactful.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that while we were visiting the slate quarries, how the moors kind of, so horizontally, the moor's been industrialised in some ways in terms of the processing of irrigating the land to make it livable in, whereas in Wales with the slate, it's almost like vertical, like industry on the side of a mountain, really. So like different planes of scarring the landscape, really, and maybe the the slates are just more visible because they're vertical compared to what we stand on. So I thought it was interesting yesterday when we were on the Midnight Moor, how with Emily Mayer, she was asking us to go on a turf walk and putting pieces of turf with sphagnum and peat on our heads to kind of reverse that kind of standing, whether we're standing on the moors or the moors are kind of weighing us down, really. And so it's interesting doing that up high in Wales. And I wondered how different that might feel doing that in Meppen, where it's flat moors, really, and it would be very different feeling to do that in Meppen. I think it's quite an interesting challenge to, we've done lots of like comparing, maybe like visiting your moor, you're coming to visit our moor, and there's an element of like, oh, your moor's like this, our moor's like this. So yeah, there's something really interesting, and that I think is part of our exchange. It's about exchanging our practice, but also the places that we are and places we've worked, really. So I think there's this synergy between how we work, what we do, where we work, what that place is like, that kind of post-industrial spaces, but in very, very different ways.
Yeah, post-industrial is a very important word, because this is also a similarity, right? The work on the moor in Meppen and also the work in the slate in the quarries here have been, they came to an end somehow, both, and they are on the way of being historized or historized somehow. And still they were and are so important for both places, because they're the reason why, for example, villages, were built.
To see like all the connections of like people's the jobs connected to it, the history, people being aware of the history of the landscape, and that being used by local artists also. Again, like when we did the dance next to the river in Meppen.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, so this kind of like, to respond to the landscape there, and then also like hopefully it's, always involving people beyond like the art sector in all these kinds of activities and learning from their professional knowledge or their private, just life knowledge. Yeah, so that's something we started doing a little bit on these trips that we did together.
I mean, part of the exchange is about, what we're learning, and there's obviously a load of factual stuff that we're learning, but it's also about how we're learning as individuals and how we're going to kind of, tweak or change or experiment with our own practice or, collectively and such like. And I think that, just the conversation now is really demonstrable of like at every level we're learning something. And sometimes it's quite hard to articulate it, isn't it? But is there anything that's like particularly kind of powerful that's coming out that we haven't maybe reflected on so far? I don't know.
I think something that is for me very hard to still grasp, but it's so present, is the language. Is language as a practice, as a way of communicating, as a means for, I don't know, creating narratives, creating story. It's everything in a way, and I have not so much started to think about it from my own perspective and my own experience as like me, and I guess also you. We use the common German language that is like you learn at school, and I didn't grow up with any other like language my surroundings uses, but that is not state level or a state language. I don't know what's the term for that in English.
Like
so
official language.
Also, no? But even though in Germany, also in the region where I grew up and where Meppen is also placed, there's a kind of, and they have their own language, and I think that is something that still has to somehow develop for me or sink in what I will do with that, because language here is so much, it's so important, and it's in everything.
Yes, of course. So for those that don't know who are listening to this, we have another language in Wales called Welsh, and it's very much a living language, particularly in the valley where we are today. And so, Ewan and I converse in Welsh, and many of the community members, it's 60% or so of people that...
In the rural part of the valley, yes.
Yeah.
60%. And so then part of the process with our visit, we wanted to include Platt Deutsch and stuff on our information, don't we, really, and kind of bringing Welsh language as well into everything that we did on our travels as well. So, is that the kind of thing that kind of or just being in Wales, or kind of knowing about the Welsh language that made you think more about language use in terms of?
Yeah, I don't know. It has many different aspects. I mean, it's for me, maybe it's a question of inclusion. It's a question of like your own capabilities. What languages do I know and understand and can use myself as an individual? Then also in like in an art practice or in whatever you do to create to communicate also with communities and people. Yeah, but then I also have the feeling it's like being able to switch languages or to know and to have a discussion in various languages is also kind of an enriching process in a way. It's a way of...
Yeah, language informs all of your connections, and if we talk about relational arts practices, that makes a difference in which language you speak, or like what setting you speak, or how informal or how close you can be to someone. Yeah.
And who you are also. You are a different being, maybe in a different language, but it's different. Yeah.
My family always say that I speak louder when I'm speaking Welsh on the phone than in English. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, that's one effect.
Weird.
Yeah. Another thing I still reflect on is the question of what's the site of production for community arts, because we've seen here and in Meppen so many different places, like a shop that is also a gathering point and a gallery, and set really inside of the village at a corner. We've seen a place like this transformed church that is from there on they bring out activities a lot, but it's really geared towards you doing all these kinds of productions and not just one genre. So I'm thinking about what could be the ideal place for the kind of art that we are doing, and what does it need, or which project needs what kind of setting, and how does it inform how the project can develop, which kind of people will be part of it, how it will be carried out. So I think I'm often thought about the site of production as like a restriction, because there's not what I needed often, I think, in the past. So now I'm thinking more what kind of, how could I build something, or how can we, I know in other arts collective, they always bring their own kitchen, they just have a mobile kitchen that they bring wherever they work. So they are always independent in that sense. So maybe that's some kind of thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually, now that you say it, there's quite a lot of people we visited. There's a physical space connected, whether it's a mall or whether it's a shop or a place to gather that's a physical space, really. Because lots of the work we have done is less with a physical space, and we've been actively not doing things in physical spaces that things would usually happen in order to kind of break down some barriers of who might engage, really. That's something I found really fascinating by spending more time with you. And I think that's the thing for me, it's time, I think, is the crucial thing, is what we need together to be able to learn more. But through having more time to discuss with you about your practice is the nuances about how a project for you appears, really. So I think it feels more that you work more collaboratively and collectively in some ways, that the ideas emerge together like a simmering pot of stuff that comes together. Whereas I think maybe we approach stuff in an emergent way, but maybe we set something going a little bit first, and then we don't know where it's going, but then it starts. So there's really subtle differences, I think, but I think that's really fascinating. I just want to spend loads more time to find out more about each of the projects that you've done, and finding out more about some of the earlier projects that you did. That's like, whoa, that is crazy! I can't believe you did that.
It was really lovely to hear about some of that when we met Jackie in Dalgylch, and because then there's like another opportunity to have a sort of table discussion with someone else, and then you were kind of sharing kind of experiences and work practice and stuff that he hadn't heard of before, and it was just like, oh god, something else that they've done, and that sounds really interesting, and how that came about. But what struck me as well yesterday was just talking about, and we've spoken about it previously, is that you're invited to places by people who are rooted in the community, and how that enables you to have a sense of freedom to be maybe a little bit more risque or a little bit more radical, because you're not gonna, people maybe are a bit more accepting of that if you're not from the area. but you're an invited guest. So then you are received positively, and people are therefore prepared to go out their comfort zone a little bit more because they're like, well, these people aren't quite from here, so we'll give it a go. You know, that type of thing. And I think I'm mulling that over as a kind of process.
Yeah. And as how different it is for us, who we're kind of embedded within the communities.
Yeah.
And kind of so we live with these people that we're doing creative activities with. You know, so we're not stepping away from it. We do meet them on the street and in the shop, you know, years after we've done activity with them. So it's a very different relationship with the people who participate.
Yeah. And for us, we always say like it's not like there's one process that is better than the other one or preferable, because often the conversation goes to that, you know, should it only be activity from the area or not, you know, brought to the area? But we always say like we need a partner who's doing it long term, and we can connect with that. And that's also something you are doing. You are long term, and you're always like inviting, commissioning, and like making work possible for many people to come together. So these kinds of processes, just they have to be linked.
Yeah.
That's why you can start every project with a huge amount of knowledge or networks. That's probably one of the reasons why, you know, especially the starts of new projects, just like what you mentioned right now, differ a little bit, because we have to, you know, we have to gather knowledge, and we have to gather connections when we start in a new place. And I mean, you already, you know, have so much experience, and you know topics, you know, open questions that you already, when you come up with a new idea, can connect directly in the head. That's what I imagine, at least. And so I would agree, it needs both. Yeah.
So we think we are in the process of like finding out what we are doing, and then just to reflect as a final question on this whole process that we've been through, just to make it clear for together, like why did we get engaged with this kind of exchange? What did it bring to us? Why is it important to have this kind of international exchange? Because you could also say, like, why not just do it in your country, or, you know, like in your wider area? What did it bring for you to have this been like a German-Welsh exchange?
Well, I think for me, I've always thought of rural places, whether this is just in Wales or the UK, that it should have the same quality work as any major city across the world, really. So everything I've worked on, I compare it to what's happening in New York or Paris or London or something, really. And just because it's in a low density population area, it shouldn't compromise on quality or artistic practice. And so for me, working internationally is just part of that, really, and being in touch with what people are doing internationally. And this felt like an amazing opportunity because it was about socially engaged practice, which there are organisations in Wales, several organisations, but there's not like a network of socially engaged practitioners, really. So I felt this was an amazing opportunity to bring different cultures together, to have that exploration. It fits in with the kind of what we do in terms of, well, we don't know what's going to happen. Let's see what emerges from this, and seeing it as an opportunity to inform our practice and to share some of what we do humbly. We're quite humble with what we share. We don't shout about what we do. We don't claim things that we're making massive changes in the world. But yeah, that's an opportunity. So far, I'm really enjoying it. So thank you.
Good to know.
I don't think I've got anything to add to that.
I'm sorry, I might have said everything.
You shaped it,
well
your words
said.
shaped it so beautifully.
Okay. And what about you, in terms of why did Syndikat want to be part of an international exchange?
I feel... now the words lost me. I feel it's such such a lovely invitation to reflect on yourself as well, no? Because you have to somehow think about, okay, what do I share about what is our practice, and from how we do it to what results we want to achieve, to share it with others, and then also have an outside eye looking at that, and so I get to know my own practice and learn about it by sharing with you and talking with you and experiencing also now your work here, as well as it's kind of a provocation for oneself. So it's about a great learning opportunity, as well as an opportunity to have like things to grow from it. A bit more growing out of that,
agreed.
Nurture ourselves with waters from different currents,
And also to like discover all these similarities that are actually really, really much the same. Just even though you're like it's such a long train ride apart, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes,
and just creating bonds. I think also like for the future, this is a bond that will result in something else. Yeah.
Absolutely, completely agree. It feels like a beginning, really. It's not a complete thing. It feels like it's the start of something.
It is.
Really.
And it feels like it was also necessary, like to have Cultural Bridge providing us with the opportunity to do this in such a long and slow way, and take that amount of time before even setting out like this will be the project, you know. And now we just do it like we have the first shared residency with an artist from here happening in 2 months or 2.5 months. So that is really exciting now.
Yeah. And it feels like there's so many opportunities to continue the sharing, and there's no, like our practice is really, there's no end to it really. It's like this ongoing evolving. It's like the sphagnum that Emily was sharing with us. It grows forever. It's just the bottom bit rots away and turns into peat, but the sphagnum keeps on growing, searching for the light.
So let's keep on growing.
Let's keep on growing and doing some
Let's be like sphagnum.
And we need water. And there is a bit of a water shortage, so, you know.
So in the area we're in now, there's for the last 2 days, there's a burst pipe and a major pipe. So while you're visiting us, there's now no showers or drinking water because a massive area of the valley, like more than half of the valley, has no water supply. So that's been an interesting...
You learn so much about the area, how it works, how people connect to each other in this moment.
And how the underground pipes connect or don't connect, and where people get their water supply from. So it's very apt, isn't it, to be having this experience now when we're thinking about water as our theme.
It was a very kind of fitting coincidence that, you know, talking so much about water, and then, you know, the water itself decides to, you know, step into the conversation.
Well, and part of what we're exploring at the moment is people's relationships to water, and some of the questions we've been asking them is what questions they want to ask about water. And some of the conversations we've had is about, do you know where your water comes from? Well, if they didn't know before,
they know now.
They know, yes.
And we know.
So
thank you for sharing and having this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danke schön.
Speak soon.
Dio.
Yeah.